Marvel Studios continues its partnership with Sony in the MCU Phase 4. In Spider-Man No Way Home, we continue the examination of the multiverse, which has been mentioned in some movies and shows like Loki, Ant-Man, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But this iteration sees Peter Parker, played by Tom Holland, teaming up with Doctor Strange, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, in an attempt to get the world to forget that he, Peter Parker, is Spider-Man. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home, written by Chris McKenna and Erik Sommers, directed by Jon Watts, starring Tom Holland, Zendaya is Michi, Benedict Cumberbatch, Jacob Batalon, Jon Favreau, Jamie Foxx, Willem Dafoe, Alfred Molina, Wong, Tony Revolori, Marisa Tomei, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and many others. So let me just start off by saying, if you didn't watch, I'm getting in my car for this preview, so the sound might be a little bit better than you guys are used to, but let me just start off by saying, if you did not watch any of the previews, if you have no idea what's about to happen, if you really want to watch this movie like going in on a blank slate, I don't think you should listen to this review, because it's virtually impossible to talk about this movie without spoiling it, because basically everything after like the first 10 minutes is going to be pure spoiler. So I'm giving you the warning now so that I could say everything I say after this is going to be pretty spoilery. So if you want to go in this with a blank slate, watch it first, come back and see me. If you don't care, just listen. I'm going to give you my full opinion on everything going on. So, Spider-Man No Way Home starts basically right after the events of Spider-Man Far From Home, in which Spider-Man is framed for killing Mysterio. Mysterio sends out a message about Spider-Man and his identity, so the entire world knows who Spider-Man is. J. Jonah Jameson runs the Daily Bugle, which is funny this time, because it's not a newspaper. It's basically Alex Jones. He's Alex Jones, and it's very entertaining because it fits. In terms of like a modern day context, it really fits for like what J. Jonah Jameson would be today. So really good. Of course, that's why is his name not in the credits? I just realized too. Oh Lord, I forgot this guy's name. You know what? We got time. I'm gonna Google it. Not hard either. J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons. So that's entertaining. Anyway, so J. Jonah Jameson really wants to get Spider-Man. Spider-Man's running around with his identity out, and he realizes it's wrecking the people's lives around him. So as a result, he decides, and when he's wrecking the people's lives, specifically his Aunt May, his friend Ned, and his girlfriend MJ. So he decides, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna go talk to, oh crap, I unlocked it. I'm gonna lock this. Oh no, that's the one. There we go. He decides that he's gonna go talk to Doctor Strange and get Doctor Strange to do something to get everybody to forget that he's Peter Parker. As a result, a spell is cast, and if you know from the previews, all of these villains start showing up in this universe. Now, since Marvel has taken over the Spider-Mans, I think they have significantly increased, all of them. I still think about the Vulture as a villain and what a great villain that was, how much sense he made, how it provided the Marvel nuance of like, is this guy really a villain? You know? And I think in this film, it very much continues to play with those types of ideas. Is this guy a villain? And actually in every movie, every Spider-Man villain movie, they weren't straight up villains. They were just people who were in opposition to Spider-Man. This movie is probably the first one in which you have villains that aren't just like, you know, motivated, that don't have like, that don't have some sort of like specious motivation, but more their, and when I say specious motivation, I mean like in the Vulture, you have him like, you know, these guys just, they want to get their jobs. They want to sell stuff on the black market. They want to make money. They're not really bad guys. They were just opportunists. Second one, Mysterio, they're all salty about what's going on in Stark Industries. So, they decided to like take matters into their own hands, which is why they're up against Spider-Man. And in this one, you're getting all these villains from other Spider-Man movies. And so they feel more purely motivated in some ways by evil or their hatred of Spider-Man, which doesn't feel as black and white. With all of that being said, in a lot of ways, Spider-Man was kind of the antagonist of this film for me. You know, much of this would have been solved, much of this film would have been solved if he would have just let Doctor Strange press the button and send everybody back to their universes. However, one of the major plot points of this film is that they come over and Aunt May sees one of them and that is one of them, Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin from the very first Spider-Man movie. And she's like, they obviously need our help. We can't just send them back to the universes without helping them. And he's like, nah, we definitely got to send them back. And Doctor Strange is like, yeah, we got to send them back. Spider-Man's like, that's not my responsibility. We got to send them back. When they're about to send them back, he's like, we're just going to send them back to die. Aunt May's words get to him. I think Aunt May was 100% wrong about this because Doctor Strange's philosophy here, and I'm going to get to the movie stuff in a minute, but just let me get all the nerd stuff out first. But Doctor Strange's philosophy was that you don't know how them being alive in other universes is going to affect those other universes or this one. So they got to go back and do whatever it is they were going to do. Those were their fates. Like that's what we're doing. Spider-Man's like, no, I can't do it. Feels guilty. Snatches the box that would have sent them back. Fights Doctor Strange for a bit in a really bunch of cool scenes. Somehow beats him because it's a Spider-Man movie. Not because I ever think in any universe that Spider-Man would ever be a match for Doctor Strange. And I want to be clear about that. And there's several times in this movie in which I'm like, this is movie stuff. This is not like they want to convince me that the Green Goblin from Spider-Man 1 would ever be a match for Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. After everything we've seen this man do in all of these Spider-Man movies, like you're not going to convince me that the Green Goblin's going to give him any trouble whatsoever. But again, this is part of the movie stuff, so I get it. You got to add more. But I wish they would have given him some sort of like superpower, or some sort of like powered up, souped up glove or something to say, oh man, this dude's killing this guy. Oh my God, it's crazy. But no, it's just regular Green Goblin, which again feels kind of weird for me. It feels like a little bit short-sighted. So I will say the best parts of this movie for me are the parts where they're not depending on the original Spider-Mans and the Spider-Man villains. So whenever I saw Alfred Molina, it was like cool. And when I saw Willem Dafoe, cool. Jamie Foxx, cool. Even Thomas Hayden Church, cool. It was cool to see those guys. But then when you get to them and I realize they were large parts of what I found corny about the original Spider-Man movies. If you rewatch them, they were large parts of that. And bringing them here and knowing that you have such sophisticated storylines in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you have these two villains who are really good. Like the Vulture was a really good villain. Mysterio was a really good villain. When we get to these guys, I'm like, most of these guys, like Dr. Octopus, even they laugh, they tongue in cheek it in the movie. They're like, yeah, this is kind of corny. Like this whole Dr. Octopus scene. And it seems like this movie is headed toward a direction of just getting them to do the meme of Spider-Mans pointing to each other, because eventually Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield show up with their iterations of Peter Parker, which is cool. There's some cool stuff that comes of that. There are 2 times when I thought they leaned too heavily on the fact that all 3 of them are talking to each other and having like, you know, these like little, you know, cutesy conversations with each other where they're being supportive and kind of nervous and shy and all that stuff. Like all the things about Spider-Man that you love from the comic books. The movie leans heavily on that banter, and it does it more than once. in a way that's kind of, I thought was a little contrived. There was a couple times where I'm like, this scene is going on a little bit too long. When they first introduced these two Spider-Mans back into this universe, I think this scene's going on too long. Then later on, there's a longer scene with all three of them talking on a tower. I thought that scene went on a little bit too long as well. As a whole Marvel movie, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was I think it was a solid entry in the whole thing, but you know, people were coming out of the gate saying this is probably going to be the best Marvel movie of all time. It was not. And anybody who says it is tripping. Like, it was absolutely not. It is definitely, it's up there. It's a good Spider-Man movie, and for it to be a third iteration of Spider-Man, especially when Spider-Man 3, the original one, was trash. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was garbage. This one, basically for this to be the Amazing Spider-Man 3 and the original Spider-Man 4, that was good. They were better than that. It was better than the sum of its parts, I guess. But like individually, again, me seeing Andrew Garfield, me seeing Tobey Maguire, it was cool. Like, it was great to see them. I felt a bit of nostalgia having them back, but it leans heavily on that. It leans heavily on the gimmick of having them interact with each other, and it kind of takes away from the Tom Hollandy bits, which I really have come to enjoy about Spider-Man. So I think, you know, I'm not mad at it. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. I really do get it. And I think what they did was cool. It was a cool movie to watch. I've been watching Spider-Man for 20 years now. Yes, 20 years. Well, 19, but basically 20 years, because the first one came out in 2002. So I've been watching Spider-Man for 20 years now. 20 years. 20 years. So, yeah, I mean, it feels cool to see those guys. But it felt a little gimmicky. For me, the best parts of this was knowing that we're introducing the multiverse, like, for real. And not introducing, but continuing the multiverse. Because after the credits scenes, the mid-credits scene, they're bringing Venom into this universe, which I don't know how that's going to go. They had always said Venom wasn't going to be a part of the MCU, but obviously he is now. So I don't know where that was going. Like, I don't really feel good about, like, I didn't feel good about the Venom movie, so I don't feel good about him being in this universe necessarily. So, the acting was fine. I mean, I think like I said, there's parts of the movie that drag. I think, plot wise, there's things that it's not like they don't make sense as much as like they seem a little nonsensical. Like the whole idea that Aunt May would encourage Spider-Man to help the villains, to help like cure all the villains before sending them back. I feel like they just turned it all into a great big misunderstanding and kind of unwrite all the other movies and kind of the use for Spider-Man in those other universes. So like it kind of like becomes like a snake eating its tail at some point, which is like, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people will listen to this and be like, what, Ronald, I enjoyed the movie. I'm like, yeah, no, I did too. I think it's at least a 3.25 star movie. It's at least a 3.25 star movie out of 5 stars. Like I more than liked it, but I didn't love it. And I don't think I super loved it either. Like, I don't think I super liked it like 3.5. It's more like 3.25, but it wasn't bad. Like, I mean, I would say if you're a Marvel fan, you're going to like the movie. You're going to think they did a good job. If you're not a Marvel fan, you just like Spider-Man, you're going to enjoy it. If you like the original Spider-Mans, this will be fun for you to watch. Like, let's say you haven't kept up with Marvel. Like, the only character you really need to know is Doctor Strange and Wong. They're the only, like, characters that you'd be like, whoa, who are these people? But if you just watched every Spider-Man movie and none of the Marvel ones, you'll enjoy, like, this little, like, you know, union of all of the Spider-Mans in one film fighting all of the Spider-Man villains except for Vulture and Mysterio. So, yeah, I mean, it like I said, 3.25 of 5 stars. It wasn't bad. I liked it. But again, there was a hype saying it was going to be the best Marvel movie of all time. And I'm like, it ain't that. As a matter of fact, one of the things that got me is for it to be a multiverse movie, it felt very self-contained. Like, it felt like, and I know contracts and all that stuff come into play, but it just seems like you're in New York. Like, there had to be an Avenger or somebody else who was like, wait, what's going on? There's cracks in the universe. Like, something else is happening here. Like, there had to be somebody else wondering what was happening. But again, this is not a team up movie. You only get Spider-Man and Doctor Strange contractually. So, you know, you're not necessarily going to get that type of satisfaction in that. And that's, again, me just talking about nerd stuff, not necessarily movie mechanics. But it is one of those things where I'm like, it makes me excited to see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And like, I'm excited to see that movie because I'm excited that the multiverse has been introduced. It's been introduced since Loki, like in a serious way. Then again, with What If, like kind of solidified with What If. And this kind of continues that. So we know we got Doctor Strange and then Ant-Man and Quantumania. So they're pushing forward into the multiverse, and I'm interested to see who the big bad is that everyone's gonna have to like unite to fight eventually. But yeah, I mean, if like I said, if you're a fan, you'll enjoy it. If you're not, I mean, it wasn't the best one. Like I think this movie definitely moves the plot forward, but sitting there watching, I'm like, yeah, again, I've been watching Spider-Man for 20 years. I've been watching Spider-Man for 20 years. So many Spider-Man movies. And I kind of need a Spider-Man break. Yeah, I don't know how much more of his story I need. Like, I feel like exhausted from watching so much Spider-Man. And I thought this was pushed more into the multiverse, and it stayed more with Spider-Man and with that conflict than I really cared about. Like towards the end, I was just like, I don't really care what's personally happening to like Peter Parker. Like, I don't care what's happening to him personally. I care more about the universe as a whole. And I wonder if that's because I don't know, because I don't feel that way about the other Marvel characters, but specifically about Spider-Man. But I think it's because we just had so much Spider-Man for the last 20 years. And yeah, that's a lot. Anyway, I'm really tired. It's 2:42. You probably can hear it. So with that, 3.25 of 5 stars. I'm in my car. I'm going to go home and go to bed. Yeah, with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. To find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studio shows, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron. That's at ohitsBigRon. If you like this show, I host another show on the Pushkin Industries podcast network called Solvable. Check that out wherever you listen. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening.